I never thought I'd be that kind of woman. The type who sneaks around, checking her phone constantly, making up excuses for mysterious absences. The kind who lies to her husband of 18 years. But here I am, sitting in my parked car outside Lucas's apartment, my heart racing as I check my lipstick in the rearview mirror. It all started 6 months ago, though the groundwork was laid long before that. James and I had been drifting apart for years, in that subtle way that successful couples often do. He was always at the office or traveling for business, building his investment firm into something remarkable. I was proud of him, truly, but pride doesn't keep you warm at night. I remember the exact moment I first saw Lucas. Sarah had been begging for piano lessons, and my friend Charlotte recommended this brilliant young teacher who'd recently graduated from Juilliard. "He's amazing with teenagers," she'd said. "And not hard on the eyes either," she'd added with a wink. I'd rolled my eyes at that last part. But when I opened our front door that first Tuesday afternoon, I understood what Charlotte meant. Lucas stood there in a fitted black sweater and dark jeans, his honey brown hair slightly tousled, looking more like a model than a piano teacher. He smiled, extending his hand. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm Lucas Bennett." His hand was warm, his grip firm but gentle. "Please, call me Emma," I said, immediately regretting how breathy my voice sounded. Those first few weeks, I made sure to be busy during Sarah's lessons, working in my home office or running errands. But I couldn't help noticing things about him. The way his fingers moved across the keys when he demonstrated a piece, the patient tone he used with Sarah, the slight scruff on his jaw that appeared when he missed a morning shave. It was during spring break that everything changed. Sarah was away on a school trip to France, but I'd forgotten to cancel her lesson. Lucas showed up at the usual time, and I found myself inviting him in for coffee to apologize for the mix-up. "I should have checked my calendar," I said, leading him to the kitchen. "I feel terrible about wasting your time." "It's not a waste," he replied, following me. "I enjoy our brief chats before lessons, though they're always too short." I turned to face him, my hand still on the coffee maker. The intensity in his blue eyes made my breath catch. "Lucas, tell me you haven't felt it too," he said softly, taking a step closer. "This connection between us. I had felt it, of course. The electricity when our hands accidentally touched as I handed him his payment envelope. The way our eyes would meet and linger during Sarah's recitals. The subtle shifts in position when we found ourselves too close in the foyer. "I'm married," I whispered, though I didn't step back when he moved closer. "I know." His hand came up to cup my cheek, and I couldn't help leaning into his touch. "I've tried to fight this, Emma. God knows I've tried, but I can't stop thinking about you." The first kiss was gentle, tentative. I had plenty of time to pull away, to stop what was about to happen. Instead, I wound my arms around his neck, pulling him closer. His lips were soft but demanding, his hands sliding down to my waist as he pressed me against the counter. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing heavily. "We shouldn't," I said, even as my fingers traced patterns on the back of his neck. "Probably not," he agreed, but his eyes were dark with desire. "Do you want me to leave?" I should have said yes. Should have ended it right there, before it really began. Instead, I took his hand and led him upstairs to my bedroom. Not the master bedroom I shared with James, but the guest room at the other end of the hall. That first time was frenzied, desperate. Clothes scattered across the floor, hands exploring, discovering. Lucas kissed his way down my body like a man starving, and I arched beneath him, forgetting everything except the feel of his touch, his lips, his skin against mine. Afterward, lying in the tangled sheets, reality started creeping back in. "This can't happen again," I said, even as I traced the muscles of his chest. He caught my hand, bringing it to his lips. "We both know that's not true." And he was right. That afternoon began a dangerous dance of stolen moments and secret meetings. I found myself volunteering to pick up groceries just so I could spend 20 minutes in his apartment. He started coming to lessons early, giving us precious minutes alone before Sarah came home from swim practice. Each encounter made me feel more alive and more guilty. Lucas awakened something in me I thought had died years ago, that fire of passion, the thrill of desire. But the guilt was always there, lurking beneath the surface. James remained oblivious, buried in his work. When he was home, he barely looked up from his phone or laptop. Sometimes I wondered if he'd notice, even if I confessed everything. Our conversations had become purely transactional, discussing Sarah's college preparations, household maintenance, social obligations. One particular evening stands out in my memory. Lucas had just finished Sarah's lesson, and James was working late again. Sarah went upstairs to shower before dinner, leaving Lucas and me alone in the foyer. "You look beautiful today," he whispered, his fingers brushing mine as I handed him his check. The simple touch sent electricity through my body. "Lucas not here," I warned, but my voice lacked conviction. He glanced up the stairs, then pulled me into the small powder room, closing the door quietly. His kiss was hungry, desperate. "I've been wanting to do that all afternoon," he murmured against my lips. "This is too risky," I said, even as I melted into his embrace. "Sarah could come down any minute." "I heard the shower start," he replied, his hand sliding under my blouse. "We have a few minutes." The danger only heightened the excitement. His fingers worked magic on my skin while I bit my lip to stay quiet. When we heard the shower turn off upstairs, we quickly separated, straightening our clothes. I checked my reflection in the mirror, fixing my lipstick while Lucas slipped out first. By the time Sarah came downstairs, I was in the kitchen starting dinner, and Lucas was long gone. But my heart was still racing, my skin flushed with the memory of his touch. The situation became more complicated when James's mother decided to visit for 2 weeks in July. Eleanor Thompson was a sharp-eyed woman who missed nothing. Having her in the house meant Lucas and I had to be extra careful during lessons. One afternoon, Eleanor cornered me in the garden. "That piano teacher," she said deadpan. "He's quite young." My heart skipped a beat. "He's very qualified. Graduated from Juilliard." She gave me a long look. "Just be careful, Emma. I see the way he looks at you when he thinks no one's watching." I forced a laugh. "Don't be ridiculous, Eleanor. He's Sarah's teacher, nothing more." But her words haunted me. Were we being too obvious? Had others noticed as well? The real wake-up call came in August. Lucas and I had been meeting at his apartment while Sarah was at summer camp. One afternoon, I ran into Charlotte at the grocery store, just 2 blocks from Lucas's place. "Emma, what are you doing in this neighborhood?" she asked, surprised. I fumbled with an excuse about a client meeting, but I could see the questions in her eyes. That night I called Lucas. "We need to be more careful," I said, "or we need to end this." There was a long pause on his end. "I don't want to end it. Emma, I'm falling in love with you." Those words should have terrified me. Instead, they made my heart soar. "Lucas, I know you're married, but that doesn't change how I feel, how I think you feel too." He was right. Somewhere between the stolen kisses and secret meetings, I'd fallen in love with him too. It wasn't just physical attraction anymore. I found myself sharing things with him I'd never told anyone, not even James. He made me laugh, challenged my thoughts, listened when I spoke about my dreams and fears. The guilt became more complex after that conversation. I wasn't just betraying my marriage vows anymore, I was living a complete double life. With James, I played the role of devoted wife and mother. With Lucas, I was passionate, free, alive. September brought new complications. Sarah's piano recital was approaching, and Lucas suggested additional practice sessions. It was risky, but I couldn't resist the opportunity for more time together. During one of these extra sessions, while Sarah was concentrating on a particularly difficult passage, Lucas handed me a note. Later, in the privacy of my bathroom, I read it. "Meet me at the Milton Hotel tomorrow, 2 p.m., room 412. I need more than stolen moments with you." I knew I should refuse. The hotel was dangerous, too public, too planned, too real. But I found myself making excuses to James about a client meeting, choosing my outfit carefully the next morning. James, the hotel room became our sanctuary every Thursday afternoon. 2 hours where we could pretend the outside world didn't exist. Lucas would order room service sometimes, and we'd eat strawberries in bed, talking about everything and nothing. "Tell me about your dreams," he'd say, tracing patterns on my bare skin. "If you could do anything, be anywhere, what would you choose?" These conversations were almost more intimate than our physical relationship. I found myself sharing hopes I'd buried years ago. My desire to open my own design firm, to travel, to create something meaningful. One particular Thursday in late October changed everything. Lucas and I were in our usual hotel room, basking in the afterglow of our passionate encounter. The autumn sun cast long shadows through the windows, and I was tracing the contours of his face, memorizing every detail. "We should go away together," he said suddenly, "just for a weekend. I want to wake up with you, have breakfast together, walk on a beach holding your hand." The image he painted was seductive. "You know we can't," I replied softly, though my heart ached with wanting exactly that. "Why not? James is always traveling. Sarah's looking at colleges. We could go to the coast, find a small inn where nobody knows us. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. Mom, where are you? Mrs. Peterson saw you going into the Milton Hotel. Are you okay? My blood ran cold. I showed Lucas the message, my hands shaking. This is exactly why we can't get careless, I said, jumping up to get dressed. We've been too reckless. That night, I told Sarah I'd been meeting a potential client who was staying at the hotel. She seemed to accept the explanation, but I noticed her watching me more closely after that. The incident forced us to be more cautious, changing our meeting places and times. But fate wasn't done with us yet. In November, during one of Sarah's lessons, James came home unexpectedly. Lucas and I had shared a passionate kiss in the kitchen just moments before, and I was still flushed when James walked in. You're home early, I managed, trying to sound normal. James barely looked up from his phone. Forgot some files. He paused, finally glancing at me. You look flushed. Everything okay? Just been rushing around, I said quickly. You know how busy things get before the holidays. He nodded absently, already heading to his home office. The close call should have scared me straight, but instead, it only highlighted the growing distance between James and me. When was the last time he'd really looked at me? Really seen me? December brought more complications. The annual Thompson Christmas party was approaching, a lavish affair that I always organized. This year, Sarah insisted on having Lucas perform at the party. He's so talented, Mom, she argued. And it would be nice to have live music instead of recordings. I couldn't think of a reasonable objection without raising suspicions. So on the night of the party, Lucas sat at our grand piano, playing Christmas carols while our house filled with friends and family. He looked devastatingly handsome in a black suit, and I had to force myself not to stare. During a break in his performance, he caught me alone in the butler's pantry where I was organizing more champagne. You look incredible in that red dress, he whispered, standing too close. I've been wanting to peel it off you all evening. Lucas, please, I breathed, even as my body responded to his proximity. There are 50 people out there. Meet me upstairs in 5 minutes, just for a moment. I knew I should say no, but 20 minutes later we were in the guest room, his hands underneath my dress while I tried not to moan too loudly. The party continued below, completely unaware of what was happening above them. We nearly got caught that night. Eleanor came upstairs looking for more hand towels, and we had to hide in silence until she left. The close call sent my heart racing, but there was an undeniable thrill to it all. January brought a new level of complexity. Lucas was offered a prestigious position at a conservatory in Seattle. The salary was excellent, the opportunity amazing, but it would mean leaving Boston. Come with me, he said one afternoon in our hotel room. Leave James, start fresh with me. Lucas, I can't just abandon my life, my daughter. Sarah's heading to college next year anyway, and you're not happy with James, we both know that. He was right about my marriage. James and I were practically strangers living in the same house. But could I really leave everything behind? Start over at 38? The decision was taken out of my hands when James received an anonymous email in February. Someone had seen Lucas and me together and took photos. The email contained pictures of us entering the hotel, sharing a kiss in his car, holding hands in a cafe 2 towns over. The day James received those photos, my carefully constructed world imploded. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when he walked in, his face ashen, his iPad in hand. Care to explain these? His voice was eerily calm as he slid the device across the counter to me. My hands trembled as I looked at the images. There we were, Lucas and I, caught in moments I thought were private. The most damning was a photo of us kissing passionately against his car, my hands tangled in his hair. James, Words failed me. What could I possibly say? Our daughter's piano teacher? His voice cracked slightly. How long? 6 months, I whispered, unable to look him in the eye. 6 months, he repeated, letting out a bitter laugh. 6 months of lies. Did it happen in our home? In our bed? Never in our bed, I said quickly, though that was hardly a defense. James, I'm so sorry. Sorry you did it, or sorry you got caught. He ran his hands through his graying hair. Does Sarah know? The mention of our daughter made my stomach lurch. No, of course not. Well, that's something at least. He picked up the iPad, his knuckles white. I'm going to a hotel. I can't look at you right now. After he left, I sat in the dark kitchen for hours, my mind racing. I should have felt relieved that everything was finally in the open, but instead, I felt hollow. Eventually, I called Lucas. Someone sent James photos of us, I said when he answered. He knows everything. There was a long pause. Are you okay? Do you need me to come over? No, I said quickly. That would only make things worse. Lucas, what are we going to do? We could still go to Seattle, he said softly. Start fresh, like we talked about. Before I could respond, I heard Sarah's key in the front door. I have to go, I whispered, ending the call. The next few days were a blur. James moved into a hotel, and Sarah noticed his absence immediately. We told her he was on a business trip, but she's always been perceptive. Mom, what's really going on? She asked over breakfast 3 days later. Dad's car isn't at the office, and he's not answering my texts like he usually does. I looked at my daughter, so grown up now, nearly ready for college. She deserved the truth, or at least part of it. Your father and I are having some problems, I admitted. We're taking some time apart. Her face fell. Is it? Is it because of someone else? The directness of her question caught me off guard. Sarah. It is, isn't it? Her voice rose slightly. Who is it? Do I know them? I couldn't lie to her anymore. Sarah, please understand. Oh my God, she whispered, realization dawning on her face. It's Mr. Bennett, isn't it? That's why you were always around during my lessons. Why you looked at him that way. The disgust in her voice felt like a physical blow. Sarah, sweetheart. Don't! She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. You've ruined everything. How could you do this to Dad, to our family? She ran upstairs, slamming her door. I sat there, tears streaming down my face, the remains of our breakfast growing cold. That afternoon, James came to collect some clothes. He looked tired, older somehow. Sarah called me, he said. She knows. I nodded, unable to speak. I've scheduled an appointment with our lawyer for Thursday, he continued. Unless. Is this just a midlife crisis, Emma? We could try counseling. For a moment, I was tempted. It would be easier to try to fix things, to return to the safety of my marriage. But I knew we'd passed that point long ago. I think we both know it's more than that, I said quietly. We haven't been happy for a long time, James. Not really. He nodded slowly. Because of him? No, I answered honestly. We lost each other long before Lucas. He made me realize what I was missing. The following weeks were a blur of lawyers' meetings, heated discussions about asset division, and painful conversations with Sarah, who alternated between not speaking to me at all and crying accusations. I stopped Sarah's piano lessons with Lucas immediately. That much was obvious. But the damage was done. She refused to continue piano altogether, saying it was ruined for her now. Each time she looked at the piano in our living room, her face would cloud over with pain and betrayal. Lucas kept his distance during this time, understanding the delicacy of the situation. We spoke only by phone, late at night when I was alone in what used to be my family home. He was still planning to take the position in Seattle, and the deadline for his decision was approaching. I need to know if you're coming with me, he said during one of our calls. I love you, Emma. We could build a life together. The offer was tempting, a clean break, a fresh start, but reality wasn't that simple. I can't leave Sarah, I told him. Not now. She's already lost her family as she knew it. I can't abandon her too. One evening, about a month after everything came to light, James came over to discuss the divorce proceedings. Sarah was at a friend's house, and the empty house felt heavy with memories. I got another job offer, he said, sitting in our kitchen where we'd shared thousands of meals as a family. In Chicago. I'm thinking of taking it. I felt my heart sink. What about Sarah? She's starting college in the fall anyway, he said, then paused. Unless. She's asked to come with me, to finish her senior year in Chicago. The words hit me like a physical blow. She wants to leave? James looked at me with a mixture of pity and lingering anger. Can you blame her? Every time she sees you, she's reminded of everything. I couldn't blame her, of course, but the thought of losing my daughter completely was unbearable. That night, after James left, I called Lucas. I can't go to Seattle, I said, my voice breaking. I'm losing my daughter already. I can't move across the country from her. There was a long silence on the other end. I understand, he finally said. But Emma, I have to take this position. It's an opportunity I can't pass up. I know, I whispered. I know you do. The next few days were a whirlwind of decisions. Sarah decided to move to Chicago with James to finish her senior year. Lucas accepted the position in Seattle, and I was left alone in our big house, surrounded by the wreckage of choices I'd made. The day Sarah left was the hardest. She hugged me goodbye, but it was stiff, formal. "I just need time, Mom," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "I'll always be here when you're ready," I told her, fighting back tears. "I love you, sweetheart." She nodded, then got into James's car. I watched them drive away, taking my old life with them. Lucas left for Seattle a week later. We met one last time, in a different hotel than our usual one. The goodbye was bittersweet. "I'll always love you," he said, holding me close. "You showed me what real passion could be, and you showed me I was capable of more than I thought," I replied. "That I could still feel alive." We both knew it was truly goodbye. What we'd had was intense and real, but it had also been built on stolen moments and secrets. Neither of us could build a real future on that foundation. In the end, I sold the house. Too many memories haunted its halls. I bought a smaller place closer to downtown Boston and threw myself into building my own interior design firm, something I'd always dreamed of but never had the courage to pursue. Sarah calls sometimes now, though our conversations are still guarded. She's settling into her new school in Chicago, making friends, looking at colleges. James and I communicate through lawyers and occasional necessary texts about Sarah. As for Lucas, I heard through mutual acquaintances that he's thriving in Seattle, building a reputation as a talented teacher and performer. Sometimes, when I hear classical piano music, I think of him, but the pain has dulled to a bittersweet ache. I don't regret loving Lucas. He awakened something in me that had been dormant for too long. But I do regret the way it happened, the people we hurt along the way. If I could go back, I'd have been braver earlier, either fighting for my marriage when it first started to fade, or having the courage to end it before turning to someone else. Now, at night, I sit in my new apartment, looking out over the city lights of Boston. I'm learning to live with my choices, to find peace in solitude, and to hope that someday, the bridges I've burned might be rebuilt, even if they'll never be quite the same. They say that the most dangerous lies are the ones we tell ourselves. I'd lied to myself for years about being happy in my marriage, about being content with a life half-lived. My affair with Lucas shattered those lies, but it also shattered my family. The truth, as they say, will set you free, but first it will break your heart.